everybody, and welcome to the Large Blast podcast. My name's Stoney, and I'll be your host here to make sure that everything we make is raw. And I'm joined, as always, by my hosts, Welshie.
Save me, Emperor.
And returning host, Matt.
Faith as your shield and righteousness your sword.
So good to have you back, Matt, after a weekend of telling the fans to go fuck themselves. You have decided to return to the Large Blast podcast. So do you want to
back in the ring?
Do you want to kick things off with telling us a little bit about your hobbies goings on?
Yeah, I think I've almost been having a bit of a break from it all, to be honest, recently. I mean, I've been more busy than normal over the last few weeks, but I still feel a bit at odds with the constant updates from Games Workshop, and it really is starting to grind my gears. And there's a lot of negative energy suddenly going around the community online, and it's not really inspiring me to do much. And all the updates from Games Workshop, they just aren't really what I enjoy about the hobby. So I'm just kind of trying to reset my balance, get a few little projects out of the way when I can get like an hour in the hobby room. I've got the first Funhammer Dice Saloon tournament coming up on the 20th in 10 days time. Yeah, gotta get ready for that.
Nice.
So
how are you keeping your list fun, being as you play currently one of the best armies in the game? What's your plan?
Yeah, well, to be honest, I need to recap because there's been another FAQ, so I need to recap it all.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been keeping up with that. My army was never, I'd say my army was never soup. I refused to go out and buy more models just to buy what was hot. So I don't know. I need to write a story. You need to write a little story as to what your army is. So I don't know. I was thinking of just writing something crap and translating it into binary and just sending that. I think that's what I'll do.
I think, yeah. If you happen to win this tournament and you get a speech, you should just stand there for a full 10 minutes saying 1 and 0.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would I do if I had your eye? I tried to think what I'd do to keep it fun. I'd probably try and do all, like, no troops, just all machines, like Admech Rise of the Machine.
Yeah.
That'd be quite cool.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I was thinking of just using the same list, but I hadn't really. Yeah, I don't know. I need to think of something. I need to write it tomorrow night, basically.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
All right. So what about you, Welshie? Have you been up to much?
Yeah, I've been building a Malanthrope. So Malanthrope's this Forge World Tyrannid model. It's been around for ages. I've always used like a proxy in games. So I thought it was about time I got myself one. Realised it was 50 quid in Forge World and realised I had a load of spare bits of Tyrannids kicking around and some milliput to make copies of bits of Tyrannids I've got that aren't spare. And I've kind of been sculpting a new Malanthrope for my army, which has been quite nice. But a bit like Matt, I'm kind of with you. It has just, there's a lot of, it is quite endless, some of the stuff at the moment. I think I popped my head into the world of tournament play and had a nice day, but I think the Funhammer side is probably more my cup of tea. And also, I mean, we talked about it last week, Stoney, when Matt didn't want to be part of this excellent podcast and the boycott Games Workshop stuff. I've kind of just been trying to avoid everything Warhammer for a week. Gone on holiday, come back and really hopefully fresh.
That has really like permeated its way into everything Warhammer, really. As you guys know, I used to be a keen player of the Warhammer Total War game. And as a result of the hangover of that, I am subscribed to some Warhammer Total War YouTube channels. Yeah. And even they've got on the bandwagon. It's a fucking Warhammer Total War YouTube channel coming out being like, fuck Games Workshop, they're going to shut down my YouTube channel. And it's like, nah, bruv, you've got it all wrong.
Yeah, well, let's purge them from history, like all good religions.
Yeah.
What about you, Sturdy? Been up to anything non-getting sad about boycotts?
Not really. I mean, I've been kind of thinking about the next step in my redoing my old lead 25-year-old army. And as you guys know, in there, I've got a complete old school Keeper of Secrets. The thing about these, the old ones, is they're really small compared to the new ones, the big new ones. So I've been trying to sort of get my head around a way of kind of remaking a new Keeper of Secrets, but also keeping parts of the old one potentially, or something like that. And my kind of plan was to just make a new one, a big one in the big size, and then have the old Keeper of Secrets as kind of like his parrot on his shoulder, because he is probably about that size to him. You know. So I've been sort of having a think about that, and I was thinking what I'll probably do is I'll probably make the head of it on ZBrush and get that printed, and then sculpt the body out of clay, or modeling clay. But haven't actually put any effort into making that happen. So these are all just thoughts at the moment. But but other than that, that's been a hobby's goings on. And then just like you guys have said, just trying to duck and dive some of this crazy Games Workshop hate that's going on at the moment.
Yeah, I think I've got a bit of a theory as well, that I think normally, for me anyway, this time of year, I tend to go on a couple of week holiday, like a proper holiday, where I'm doing nothing at home, and then I come back and I haven't painted for ages, I really want to get back into it. And I haven't really had that yet. Got a little holiday booked next week, so I'm hoping halfway through that I normally go, oh man, I wish I could do a little bit of painting.
As soon as you get away, you want to go home and start painting. That's what I always get. Don't touch it for weeks, go away, and I just want to come home and do everything Warhammer.
It's the news. Wow. It's the chuffing news.
Have you heard? 6s are now 4s.
It's the news.
Gene Stealer Limo's back.
News.
All right, grab your bug spray. It's Tyranid news, potentially, at least a lore update. Welshie, we know that you're the man with his finger on the pulse of your beloved Tyranids. What's been going on with the Tyranids, with the bugs?
Well, it's all linked to the new war zone after Sheridan and all that. We don't need to dive into all the books, like we've been saying, lots of stuff coming out, perhaps too much. But very excitingly, it's kind of been confirmed that this new Octarius sector is very definitely going to include the Tyranids, very definitely going to include the Orcs. They've just had their codex, and looks like the Guard. And we've been talked about before, war zones on different scales. And this is also the kind of war zone that the Kill Team box is coming out as. And it seems like the new 40k rules that are coming, a lot of 40k lore is going to be set in that same area. But the thing that really caught my eye was this Inquisitor Fidus Cryptman that they've been talking about. Because apparently wants to divert the Tyranids. He realized there was like 10 entire planets between them and the Ultramarines. And he ordered Exterminatus on all 10. Just so the Tyranids couldn't get enough food to reach the Ultramarines, which was well extreme and sounds like a great character. Hopefully he'll get his own little Inquisitor model.
I don't know if it was this. I don't know if if it's this guy, but isn't this whole sector? Isn't the lore like of the whole sector to do with where? Because it's been going on for a while in the background, and it's where the Imperium have there's a hive fleet, and they've directed it in the path of a massive Orc empire. So
that's exactly it. Yeah,
the Imperium could make them both fight each other out, but it's gone like horribly wrong.
Yeah, they've just been getting bigger and bigger. The Orcs just keep multiplying, and the Tyranids just keep feeding on them. And it's now too many Orcs and too many Tyranids. And they have to do something about it. Yeah, so who do they turn to in that situation?
The Death Corps.
One kill team of Death Corps of Krieg.
Yeah. We've all heard of football teams, but kill teams? Pull the other one. Oh wait, Games Workshop's just made a kill team box set, which has got guaranteed pre-orders. Let's have a look into this.
Yeah, interestingly, after lots of people have been moaning about things selling out too quickly and scalpers on eBay, etc., I think this is the first time they've done this. If you pre-order the new Kill Team box, which has got the really cool, in my opinion, Death Corps of Krieg group and the Orc Commandos and some sweet terrain, on the pre-order weekend, you're guaranteed to get one. That doesn't mean you'll get one at the same time. Like as soon as they've sold out of however many they've made for the weekend, those people will get them. And if you order after that, you'll still get one. It might be a couple of months later, but I feel like that's reasonable for a company to do to ensure people are getting it.
So as long as you order on a specific date, you'll definitely get one.
Correct, but you might have to wait a couple of months to get it.
Although you can, I mean, does that mean you can't order it 2 weeks later?
I'm not sure, actually, Matt. I don't know. I assume if they sell out completely, they probably will stop taking because they're then, once they've sold out the number that have been made, they've then got to know how many to make. So
if this was just going to be on sale like the like the starter box or something, then they wouldn't even bother doing the pre-order. You're guaranteed to get one because you know that you'd be able to pick one up just by strolling into Games Workshop. So it kind of suggests that this is going to disappear into the ether.
I think so. But also, if they didn't do something like this and they did sell out all the copies on day one, everyone would get upset again. So maybe they're just covering themselves, and they'll still sell it 2 weeks later when they get it back in stock. The original Kill Team box set was on sale for like years.
Maybe. But I think the point is that they've heard that people moaning about that, and they're at least attempting to do something about it.
I'll tell you what. Here's a bit of a hot tip. If you're an Orc player and you like the Orcs from this box, then get yourself on eBay over the next couple of weeks after this comes out, because people are going to be pre-ordering. As much as the Orc models in this are cool, this is the Deathcore Krieg box, and that's what everybody knows it as, right? And so, if you want to pick up a nice different squad of Orcs or something from Make It Out of This Kill Team guys, then there's going to be shit tons of these Orc models around.
And the terrain, you could just buy some Lego wheels and stick it on the bottom of all the terrain, and you'd have a load of Orc vehicles.
Yeah, you're right. You can make some sweet battle wagons out of the terrain.
Okay, this is the rise of the Orcs. This book, this box. If you're an Orc player, this is fucking value for money.
This is real Orcs, right? This is the Orc box for people that hate the Disney squigs that want to nuts and bolts some bits of metal together on some wheels.
Buy this box, sit on the fucking Deathcore guys, sell them for 10 grand in the future, but boom, done.
This is good though. This is good because part of the the business model of fear of missing out that they seem to have been increasing is just horrible. It's just crap.
Yeah,
I agree.
I mean, like we all decided, hey, before Cursed Cities came out, the Large Blast podcast decided, hey, you know, it would be cool if we all chip in, buy that, and we all, paint a few of the models each and like have a play on the game. When we get together, it could be something we could piss about with, play 40 minutes, whatever. That would be fun. So you went down. I think Welshie, you went down there on the day it came out, and you couldn't fucking get a box.
I did. I mean, I wasn't. If it had been number one priority, I would have been queuing up before the shop opened. Sure. I think I was there like midday, but it was.
But that's still too soon for something to sell out. Like 6 hours is still like, especially when they've been hyping it. They put those models on the community, all that shit. Everyone saw that shit, saw how cool it was. They didn't do enough for anyone to get their fucking hands on it.
Exactly. Can you remember? I haven't seen it for years now, actually, but those weirdos that queue outside Apple stores to buy the new Apple iPhone. They queue, guys. 12 hours before to buy a phone that they're never going to run out of stock on, and they still queue round the block. Maybe Games Workshop thought, that's a perfect business model. We should just copy that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's obviously working for them financially. More newspaper clippings recently. I only went home to see my parents recently, and my mum had cut out a graph about Warhammer stocks from the Sunday paper. So that said, good that they're listening to at least something from the community and doing something about it.
Okay, so Grey Knights and Thousand Suns. They had a release recently with the Hexfire box, and now they've got their codexes come out. And there's some hot and spicy new rules in both of them. So, Welshie, what have we got?
Just obviously there's loads of stuff. I think the biggest thing to say is that they are full, proper, in-depth codexes to the same extent as other armies. Like there's certainly no less, other than unit-wise, rules-wise, there's certainly no less than I got when I picked up the Necron Codex, or I think is in your AdMech Codex, Matt. So that's nice for these relatively small factions, I think, especially the Grey Knights, to have a full host of rules. Just things are kind of picked out. Their psychic powers are great, as they should be for the two major psychers. The Grey Knights have got a cool aura denial one, which is going to be massive in game. We know how important denying aura buffs is. The Thousand Suns have got a kind of apothecary style one where they can bring dudes back from the dead, a mechanic that we've seen in Necrons, we see in the apothecary, we see in all different kinds of things now. And this idea in the Thousand Suns, like we've seen in loads of codices, where you actually pay points to make sorcerers, chaplains, apothecaries better before the game to give them a little bit more personality and a bit more on the tabletop, which I think is quite a cool mechanic. They've obviously both got their own kind of buffs. The Thousand Suns seems to have gone more down the kind of gimmicky route, where the more psychers you've got on the board, the more points you've got to spend on extra psychic buffs during the game, which I think is quite thematic. You get kind of extra points to make psychic tests work better or to prevent your psychic tests being denied. Whereas the Grey Knights have gone for a kind of you make characters better, and then when they're on the board, you can pick to make units better as a result. Also, importantly, I think for Grey Knights, you were saying earlier, Matt, that they're still Space Marines. They got the bonus wound. They got the wound.
Yeah. So the 2 wounds.
2 wounds and base Grey Knight model 3 attacks.
Oh wow!
So they're going to be no slouches in combat.
Nice.
So they basically got most of them got 2 attacks each base extra. The Dread Knights baby carriers have got some sweet rules, and overall the psychic phase is just going to be intense against these guys.
Yeah. I was glad when they previewed the models and they weren't turned into Primaris Marines, to be honest.
Me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
These guys both typically have been pretty expensive armies point wise. To play, haven't they? Suns and Grey Knights. So you've got to make every model count. So you've got to give it those extra wounds, those extra attacks, things like that. That will all be beneficial. They've
even got an invul save, the Grey Knights, against mortal wounds, which is very rare.
That's great. That's really good. That's great because that means straight away your Grey Knight is better than your standard Primaris Marine straight away, and that kind of makes sense because it could be something to do with their psychic powers, shielding them or whatever. I think that's great. Some
really good stuff. Too much to go into, but if you're a fan of these, I think whether they're competitive, that's such a difficult thing to decide these days, but if you're into the army, you're into the lore, and you're in for a fun game of Warhammer, I think there's a lot to pick and enjoy in both of these codices, to be honest.
Rolling in my 6-4.
Is the Emperor really a god? Is Celestine really an angel chosen from on high? I guess that's all a matter of faith. So welcome to this, the faith episode of the Large Blast podcast, where we discuss the importance of faith and religion and all that jazz to the average Imperial citizen. Let's find out now what's going on.
We're going to delve into some of the grimdark religious aspects of the Imperium of Mankind in the year 40,000. I think we've got a bit of history, first of all, with Welshie before we start to get into some of these individual bits and pieces that we have. So Welshie, as is tradition, will you take us away?
I will. So I did a little bit of research. I wanted to put together a bit of a timeline historically of how we ended up at this point, because in M30, 30k, Great Crusade starting, everyone's spreading the imperial truth, which is the complete and total removal of religion, faith, and superstition. That is the Emperor's decree that there'll be none of that. It's all stupid. Logic's the only way forward. And if we don't follow logic, chaos will get in and we're all stuffed. But of course, he doesn't tell anyone about chaos. That's the big deceit that everyone starts to find out. That he knows that religion will let chaos in. So he just tells people to stop doing it. That doesn't go down too well with one of his sons, old Lorgar, who loves to write himself a book rather than go to war and convince people of things, because he writes the Lectitio Divinitatis, which I think isn't quite it's not like the Bible. It's more of a text on what would happen if we treated the emperor as a god. What does happen is that demons start appearing. Miracles start happening, crazy shit starts going on, and people find this book, this high-level text, misread it, misinterpret it, and start thinking of it literally word for word as is, and start believing that he is indeed a god. And the first person who really drives that forward is Euphrates Keeler in the first Horus Heresy novel, who becomes one of the first living saints, and her iterator Cinderman, who kind of spreads the word from the pulpit, and this kind of goes underground and everyone's passing around little Bibles. So that's the kind of first step with this, which I think is quite interesting.
So the emperor is anti-religion. He doesn't want any kind of worship at all, really, of anything, because he knows that that's the quick pathway to chaos, basically.
That's exactly it.
But he doesn't tell anybody. Lorgar gets wind, writes his own book, starts getting passed around by, what was his name? Euphrates.
Yeah, her, Euphrates Keeler. Yeah.
Old Euphrates Keeler. Yeah. Okay.
So that's all kind of going on, and the emperor thinks, oh, it's great. I've sent my sons off. We just keep getting people into the fold, and no religion will be happening. Of course, it doesn't really go down like that. At the end of the Horus Heresy, we all know what happens. Don't need to kind of get into that. But the emperor is dead. The book's been passed around so many people.
The emperor is not dead.
There's now dead.
He's temporarily on leave.
All right, cut that bit. Cut the emperor's dead. That was a misspeak. I know the emperor's not dead.
God, don't ruin my faith.
He's in a chair. The emperor's confined to a chair at the end of the Horus Heresy. And there is an upswelling. There's lots of people that believe he's still a god. He's still like this being to be worshipped. Horus didn't win, therefore it must be God. And in M32, we get the kind of rise of the first official church, which was called the Temple of the Saviour Emperor, which swelled to about 2/3 of the Imperium believed in this kind of idea that the emperor was a god, rather than just first amongst humans. But that doesn't include any of the Space Marines at that point, doesn't include any of the Adeptus Mechanicus. It's just people of the Imperium are on board with this idea. Who's not on board with this idea as the church grows is the people currently in power, which we've seen in previous history of the real world. And we start to get this war between the administratum, who hold power, and the increasing ministorum, and the increasing power of the church and the ecclesiarchy, to the point where the church becomes so big and powerful that the most powerful High Lord of Terror is the ecclesiarch, the head of the church, rather than the head of the administratum. There's been a martyr, and the religion has swelled to at the point where it's beginning to take over government. A little bit later, we start getting people abuse that power again, as kind of based on previous historical events. But as the church gets more and more powerful, groups of Space Marine chapter masters kind of get together, the Fabricator General gets together and try and stop the church getting too big. And they basically round up all of the ecclesiarchs from Terra and just move them all to like a holy planet called Ophelia 7. So they just go and get all of the church leaders and just go, get off Terra, you're getting too powerful, we'll put you over here. Unsurprisingly, that doesn't work out.
We're doing a church bake sale, everyone get on the bus or whatever, and boom, you end up on a different planet.
That's it. So there's now a planet full of wonderful cathedrals, etc., that no one's really paying attention to, that's just swelling and still managing to influence and increase the power of the religion, increase the tithes go up. And as all of this kind of happens, we get the rise of this character, Gorge Van Dyer. Kind of starts as the administratum, but he rises to this kind of crazy dictatorial level where he's now in control of both the administratum and the ecclesiarchy. So the government and the church have ended up fully combined and fully merged with one absolute like nutcase in charge. Full,
yeah, he's a dictator, isn't he?
Hostile dictator. Yeah, the reign of blood, they call it, because so many people are just being put to death for not believing things.
He's the old L. Ron Hubbard of
Imperium. That's it. So he's kind of in charge, and anytime he hears about people not believing in his version of the faith, or he's probably not even religious at this point. I reckon he's just using it to manipulate people.
Yeah.
He goes to try and take them over, and there's a really important bit of the history that I didn't really know that much, where he goes to a planet that has a cult called the Daughters of the Emperor, which are all female, and they're not following worship the way that he wants them to. They're not paying tithes the way that he wants them to, and he manages to convince them that he is the true voice of the Emperor by sneaking into a church and getting one of his men to shoot him as he kneels in front of the emperor, in front of the
Doesn't he
altar.
have a force field?
He's got a force field. He's got a Rosarius, but they don't know what that is because they're quite kind of backwards. but they're also quite militarized. So they join him and become his bodyguards, and he has these daughters of the emperor. So you've now got this crazy tyrant. Yeah.
So my man basically like went in there with like a Rubik's cube and a flip lighter and just like confused everybody into joining the Imperium.
But
then they become something special.
Oh, they do, Matt, later on. So he walks out there with a fresh set of female combatant bodyguards. He's crazy in control and crazy in power until we see the rise of this guy, Sebastian Thor, in about M36, apparently, who comes to power and no one necessarily really knows his background, but he gets this upswell and he's going along the lines of, you know, you're paying too many taxes, this guy's killing you all, I could be your savior, etc., etc. Comes forward with his Confederation of Light to start to try and reform the galaxy, and gets all the way to the Imperial Palace, where Van Dyer kind of secures himself in the Imperial Palace. And I was thinking as I was reading all this history, I was like, where are the Custodes? What are they doing? Why? How has this happened? They are supposed to be the literal follow the Emperor to the tomb. But they've just been stood over a coffin the whole time. Or not a coffin, they've just been stood by the Emperor for like 6,000 years.
But is the maybe I don't think the Golden Throne's in the palace, so maybe that's why.
So apparently that's where they've been. So Van Dyer's locked himself in there. The Space Marines are still kind of anti-him to some extent, but there's way less of them because it's post-Horus Heresy. So they start coming to try and attack the Imperial Palace. And suddenly the Custodes go, oh, this might be a good time for us to get involved. And while they're locked in the palace, they take one of these daughters of the Emperor. And apparently this is another thing, no one really knows what happened. But they take one of the daughters, one of his bodyguard. And the thought is they take her to the Emperor, to the Golden Throne. And she has this revelation, oh, Van Dyer's the real baddie. And he gets dead quite quickly, which is quite cool.
But she becomes the first saint or something. She's called Catherine.
She's one of the Saint Caterina, I think.
Yeah.
There's tales that she's that.
So she kills him with some psychic power or something. How does he get?
I think she stabs him.
Yeah, it's just a film.
Oh, she just kills him. Oh,
it's like a Roman emperor being like stabbed in the back.
Yeah,
by, like,
it really is.
The Praetorian Guard rising against him.
So you've got Sebastian Thor like at the gate with the armies and most of the Space Marines and the AdMech, and then instead of like destroying the whole palace, the Custodes managed to end it from within by getting him killed. Which you kind of think, if that was the aim of the Custodes, why didn't, say, 3 of the 10,000 just go and do it themselves? Duplicity.
There was a new series of MasterChef. Like the Australian ones are like 20 episodes, 60 episodes long. What am I saying? You know, you've got to really fucking dig into that shit.
So Van Dyer's down. Thor then takes control, becomes the ecclesiarch, but goes for a full-on reformation and divides power, puts in a kind of hierarchical structure of bishops, etc. So everyone's in control of smaller amounts of things. And that's when we start seeing the flagellation and the salvation and all of the other parts of the religion start seeping into the religious side of things. And as part of what he does to try and reduce power of the ecclesiarchy, he bans the ecclesiarchy from having any military wing. And the words that he uses are...
The ecclesiarchy shall have no men at arms.
Which, of course, is then why the daughters of the emperor become the sisters of battle. Because they are no man.
They got tits.
That's right, Matt. And they can serve.
And you can see it in their armor.
They can serve the ecclesiarchy because it happens to get round the rule of the ecclesiarchy not having a military wing. And that pretty much kind of stays fairly similar then until 40k. Everything just gets more religious. But the whole idea was to stop a kind of tyrant like Van Dyer taking control. And most importantly, if they ever want to bring any of this back fully into canon, our man Trazin the Infinite has Sebastian Thor's head in one of the reserved jars.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Oh, wicked.
Oh, like the animator.
That's it.
That is. So, but what's the religion? So the religion called? What's the religion now?
So the religion, well, the lack of religion at the start of 30k was called the imperial truth, but now the official term is the imperial cult. And the kind of summary of the imperial cult is that the emperor is master defender of mankind, essentially. He has unrivaled power, and then that's written down in doctrine as the imperial creed, which states that all humanity must be brought in, psychers and mutations must be controlled. The emperor is and has always been a god. So there's the full revisionist history directly opposite to the word of the emperor himself. The emperor is the one true god. The heretic must be purged. The alien must be abhorred, and the psyker must be. Oh, I've got that wrong, haven't I?
Must be beaten up. Just beat
heretics,
the shit out of the
fucking
psyker.
heretics, aliens, and psychers are bad, and that you must unquestionably obey the imperial constitutions.
And unless you're allowed to do otherwise. And this works quite interesting because we have a whole episode about AdMech, and if you want to have one example of where basically you're allowed to be in the Imperium, but you're allowed to not have the official faith, it's the AdMech, because they don't believe in that, and they're allowed to not believe in that, and so are other people, which is quite interesting. But I in some ways I disagree with the idea that there wasn't faith in 30k. I think that the emperor was kind of creating faith in science and a belief in technology without things like AI. And the emperor kind of preached that reality. He wanted humanity to believe that science and not religion were the way forward. But in a way, almost inadvertently, he helped to create and nurture humanity's need to believe in something, because he showed himself to be like a god. Even in 30k, he appeared on these worlds to find the Primarchs as like a god coming down from the sky, and humanity almost needs to have faith in something, and they ended up having faith in the emperor, and then everything went a bit wrong, so they ended up having faith in him, which is kind of what he always was creating inadvertently.
Oh yeah, that's definitely true that it was inadvertent.
And is unquestioning faith in the emperor as a leader any different to having unquestioning faith as him as a god?
I mean, it's really difficult. Obviously, a lot of people will probably have noticed that there's a lot of stuff in 40k which sort of pulls upon stuff that you might have seen in real life history, theological history, and also kind of esoteric history as well. And I think that it's really interesting what you were saying, Matt, about the emperor coming down and being kind of a god originally, because I kind of see him as sort of three phases in a way, that sort of a bit like the Father, Son, Holy Ghost type thing. Where it's like when he the first part, like when people are like didn't know him and he comes down and he's all kind of fire, brimstone, Old Testament about it. And then he kind of becomes the emperor and he's kind of like a Jesus New Testament type figure. And then, and then he's also this kind of ever-present kind of omniscire, Holy Ghost type figure as well. So I think that that's kind of like a comparison. But I also think it's quite interesting about the fact that he knew about chaos and stuff, but kept that secret. And that kind of this hinting at like esotericness and this kind of a magic, things like that, because a lot of religion is based on esoteric thinking and magical thinking and stuff like that. And you could almost say that like a lot of modern religion is basically just magical practices without sex and blood magic in it anymore. It's just kind of boring magic, basically, like kind of doing rituals, singing rituals, ritual worship, that kind of thing. So I think like esoteric history is really interesting when you're looking at Warhammer 40,000. Magical thinking and schools are kind of divided into three categories, which is right-hand path, left-hand path, and chaos magic. And that's why, you see pictures of Jesus holding his right hand up, fingers up, and left hand down. All of that is all to do with right-hand path, left-hand path. So you could say, for instance, that the right-hand path of magic is supposed to be about being the right-hand path to God. So it's a bit like, much like the Imperium. It's about like trying to get closer to God by doing magic or like but trying to get closer to the Emperor. Obviously this is a real crash course in kind of magical shit, so this isn't really like there's a lot more to this than I'm kind of saying, but like and then right hand path magic is about kind of harnessing, it's about being the god of your own world and bending the world to your will and using powerful beings like old gods and demons and things to kind of get your will and stuff like that. So I see that as very much a kind of a Chaos Space Marine type thing, where they've been kind of like they want to,
Or it's not even. It's like that's like chaos before they really fall to chaos. That's like Magnus going, "Oh, I can actually utilize these demons to do well. I can still do it while still being in control."
Yeah, exactly. So this is, it's definitely like, it's considered a more dangerous path of magic for all the reasons that are kind of outlined in the Horus Heresy and things like Magnus falling and all that kind of stuff. Whether you believe in it or not, this is just kind of the esoteric history of it. And there is, people do think, oh, you could go crazy if you do this kind of shit, or like devil worship and all that kind of stuff is considered like left-hand path magic, sorry. And then chaos magic is like the hardest one to explain, but it's basically a kind of an idea that there isn't any such thing as coincidence. Really,
like Zinch.
Yeah, basically it's very Zinchian. So it's this kind of thing. So if you were practicing chaos magic, you don't necessarily believe in anything. You might pray to God for a week, and then you might become a Hindu, and then you might start doing some other weird, like, find a deity or something you want to worship or whatever, and then you kind of make your own rituals.
Like a Hollywood fad.
So, I mean, it's no, not really, because it's kind of like an entire lifestyle. It's like probably the most hardcore of all of these, because it's about, you kind of create your own sort of magical rituals out of things that like do well for you. If you like, it's very difficult to explain, but it's neither like good or bad, so I think that you could say that's kind of like chaos before like mankind's influence, if you would. So it's kind of like a sort of a belief in it that chaos is kind of a manifestation of man, if you see what I mean. It's kind of like something that existed. It's kind of a primordial thing that existed before.
Well, that's it in a nutshell in 40k. It's the ethematic kind of resonance that's always been and always will be. Like when Samus comes out and he's like, I am the essence of the first murder, and it's like something bad happened, and that's reverberated uncontrollably throughout time forever.
But it's also kind of reflective in the fact that like the Imperium used demons and stuff a lot as well. It's not like necessarily like, they don't necessarily see it as a completely evil thing. It's just this kind of a thing that exists, and is a reflection. The Emperor
as a real combination of your 2 points there. Like Matt, you were saying like belief in science to the point of faith, and also this idea of like you were saying there, being able to control powers beyond your ability. That even the Emperor falls to that, and he's almost kind of hypocritical in his idea of like, it's truth, I want to open your eyes to everything, but then he doesn't, because he still keeps some things back, and even like pisses around with the webway, which he is even beyond him at that stage, like trying to build a webway gate in the palace, which isn't directly magic as it is in 40k, but it kind of is. It's still related to the warp thing.
Oh yeah, and all the other characters in 40k's hubris pales into insignificance compared to the Emperors, really.
I'm really looking forward to when we do a chaos faith episode, because actually the question of whether chaos is good or bad in 40k is interesting, and the faith element is interesting, because none of this stuff in 40k is as simple as all the people in the Imperium love the Emperor, and all of chaos are like love a chaos god or whatever. It's just there's you can go way more in depth than that, and I think some of your points there would be really interesting in the context of that the whole chaos faith. That's really interesting.
Well, sure.
And the modern aspects of magic and religious.
I think definitely, like, if there's one thing that beardy geeks who want to bang witchy ladies know, and that is you've got to do some magic, because basically magic is about fucking. It's basically kind of weird religion stuff with fucking involved. So like it's all gravy. And you know that the people that made Games Workshop, you know, they had a heavy metal record label. They, you know, they need magic to get laid. It's a story as old as time. It's why magic was invented, you know.
Yeah.
I think, but there's so many sort of hints towards that. Like even like obviously the difference between the sort of main split between left-hand path and right-hand path magic occurred with Aleister Crowley, who used to be a member of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn before he like split from there and made his own magical practice called Flamer, which is kind of what is like kind of modern left-hand path magic is based on now. The demon that he used to take him on the journey to make Flamer was called Horus. So there's
well.
So there's literally like,
I guess Horus is always
did no one say to him at that point though, you know, Horus is just a fiction, is like a real factual historical character. Why do you pick that name?
But you know, it's all kind of, it's all like that, like the, you know, it's all based on weird religious texts that have like mentioned Jesus or whatever, and you know, like it's all kind of like they just find olden day memes or like just kind of save them and like
like some of the crazy Nazi beliefs in like fuel and Atlantis and like weird existence beyond planes of
don't even get me started on the esoteric belief of the Nazis, because I think that's what kicked it all off in the first place, buddy.
Well, yeah, I mean, we could go down a rabbit hole with that, especially with knights and knightly orders. But if we were having this discussion in a hab block and we were out on the piss in the year 41,000, because I don't think we would be that faithful. I think we would be like, I think we'd see the emperor as a god, but he'd be this completely mythical, distant figure. We wouldn't know what a space marine was. We'd have heard a rumor of them.
You don't think religion is a part of our day-to-day lives? It
would. And I mean, it is like it is, but it isn't. Like I don't think we're as religious as people like the Sisters of Battle. Not everyone are raving lunatics. Like
sure.
You probably just in a slave gang.
I mean, if you were just a normal citizen and you were that religious, you'd probably look to go and join the Sisters of Battle, or at least go and shine their shoes or do some other, you know, you probably wouldn't be out working in the meat pie factory or whatever. You'd be, you know.
Like, has either of you read anything? What about like in Necromunda? Is there anything about faith in Necromunda?
Wow.
Is it just money talk?
Well,
is that the faith?
Certainly, I know a thing or two about some Necromunda stuff, Matt, let me tell you. Yes, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Redemptionists, because I know they've had some cool models out recently and we've shown them some love on the show before. So I thought that we'd have a little bit of a chat about the delightful Redemptionists. So basically, the Redemptionists are made a gang in Necromunda that are made up of fanatical priests of the Administratum that believe that redemption can only be found through pain and death. A little bit like flagellants in real life, but we'll come back to that. Enough real life shit for now. It's back to the world of 40k. They seek their own redemption through death on the battlefield, and by killing other people, they basically see it as they're doing them a favor, because then when they're dead, they can be judged by the emperor. For them, sin exists everywhere, and every creature is guilty of sin and needs to be purged with either blade or fire. Redemptionist cults are often funded by the Administratum, as they can be good breeding grounds for fanatical assassins who can be recruits for inquisitors or cardinals. For Redemptionists, it's not enough just to cleanse a planet of aliens. They must also cleanse anyone that they see as helping the aliens, and anyone who they might have helped, and anyone that they might have known, and anyone they think might help the aliens in the future. Then it's the only way to be sure. Any act against the Imperium damns everyone in the Imperium, as they essentially allowed it to happen through some kind of butterfly effect in the eyes of the Redemptionist. So everyone is guilty of sin. Everyone is guilty of every sin that has befallen the Imperium. And the only way to find redemption is to die.
Blindly. So why do they
My
wear
God.
buckets of fire on their head?
Because because you gotta
because they're cold.
You got to cleanse them through blade or fire, and it is expensive. Like the Imperium might fund all their weapons and stuff, but it doesn't fund their heating bills. So fire on the head. So Archdeacon Lou Millard is the self-appointed leader of the Redemption. She has made 8 dictates for every true believer to follow. So you're ready to hear these to find out if you are a true believer. Okay, so number 1, red is the color of redemption. It is the color of fire and blood. So cool. Get some red clothes on. Number 2, no drugs or alcohol. Anything that gives pleasure is a sin. Is sin given substance. Okay.
What if you get pleasure from being faithful to the Emperor?
Yeah,
well, I mean, I think that's, where this might come into.
Okay.
Right, we'll come to that at the end anyway. Do not suffer the witch to live. Throw them in the fire. Do not suffer the mutant rend his flesh apart. Do not suffer the heretic to live, for they have heard his truth and have heeded it not. Force them to penance and then to death.
Mm.
And number 6, if the Emperor requires you to appear as others, do so. The mask and red robes of the redemption must be donned when time comes to send sinners to their fate. Number 7, when you take up weapons in the Emperor, do not show your face. You are the Emperor's tool and not on your own business. And the last and most important rule number 8, pain is a gift. Mortification is a duty that must be performed daily. They're pretty gnarly. They're pretty into it. I think you're right, Matt. They probably do get a kick out of, they're just confused Sado people into S&M, basically.
Yeah. They are like, you could pluck them up and put them straight into Lewis Bonfire Society, and they probably fit right in.
It's true, yeah.
Do they perhaps one of them there was throw them into the fire? Do you think that's what the head fires are for?
It is. You've got to you cut them up with the saw into little manageable bits, and then you throw a head fire with you, so you're never without a fire or a sword.
As long as your fire's burning, you means you've recently dismembered a heretic.
Exactly.
Yeah. Nice.
All right. Cool. Well, the Redemptor Priest is obviously an important part of the the redemption. And he's a part, you might see him on a battlefield in 40k, and he is the only one whose words could save non-believers from their unholy existence. And you guys know this model, right? He's got like the deacon's hat on. He just looks like a fucking priest holding up a megaphone. So anyway, if they're not around, then deacons are the next ones up. They're the Redemptor Priest seconds in command, and they do things like go around the services that they're doing and take notes of people that aren't paying attention to be killed later on and stuff. The deacon's face is always rewarded with positions of responsibilities and the best weapons that they can get hold of. Obviously, most of Redemptionist squads aren't made up of deacons and redemptors or anything like that. They're made up of brethren that are just normal dudes like you and me that have been tricked into joining the Redemptionists and are out there. We've just got a tiny fire on our head. We've still not quite got used to the balancing aspect of it. Just a normal gun, not a flamethrower or anything fancy. But then they've got their cool, excellent units as well, are the Zealots, which are the ones with the big fuck off chainsaw. We've seen these guys. We love the old model. Yeah. Great model. They're in a permanent state of rage. They throw themselves headfirst into the battle, looking for pain. They often whip themselves when no one's around to savor the pain. They either carry close combat weapons or pistols so they can watch their enemy die. And they just fucking love killing people, basically. Just angry ass religious bastards.
Oh, great.
Yeah. They are like the extreme religious zealots in Necromunda, aren't they?
They're very similar to flagrants in real life that were like people that would go around beating themselves with sticks and things, and quite often just end up murdering a bunch of people in the town that they went to for being Jewish or something. They travel around. They'll plan a crusade that will get funded by the administratum, and then they'll send out a Redemptor priest with a bunch of redemptionists just to go from town to town preaching of the redemption. And quite often what will happen is when the Redemptor Priest moves on with all the new converts, some of the people that he's left behind will be converted. And because there's no priest or anything there, they'll just go crazy and just start killing everybody, because it's like, oh, you know, it's like, you know, it's time for us to do the redemption and everybody is guilty. So let's get to chopping people up or whatever.
It's a bit different to when the Jehovah's Witness comes to your door, I imagine.
That's it. I play more the role of the redemptionist when the Jehovah's Witness comes to my door, you know.
Fire up the chainsaw, darling.
Exactly.
Get my fire hat.
Well, we're not even going to touch on this, but like that, when you think of like there's literally billions of people making their way across the galaxy on a pilgrimage to get back to Earth. Like, I wonder why and what makes them so different to all of the billions that don't bother. Like that, I guess some people they're just more religious, or they're whipped up by people like the redemptionists to kind of go nutty and
plot
go
twist.
back to Earth.
They are. What if they've a gene stealer cult the whole goddamn time?
Oh yes,
for a ship to Earth, and they're
that
infiltrate Terra.
Yeah. And the custodes would let them all through.
Yeah.
It kind of just comes down to sort of personality type, doesn't it? And like, what's your flavour of religion that you want to do? And it's that, you know, like I said, these redemptionists, much like flagelists of the past, were basically people that kind of like, because there's this thing about I can never say the word. Is it flagellant? It's a flagellant. So a guy flagellating, like olden day ones, like some of the ones that were really into it used to say that they basically they'd experienced God's touch or whatever, and they basically came their pants. They were just like guys that were super into like sadomasochism and didn't realize it, and just thought coming in their pants was God touching them up or something.
Yeah. And I guess it depends where you're born, isn't it? Because there's there's like cardinal worlds, like planets that are a giant cathedral, and I guess they're all probably nutcases. Mm-hmm. Whereas on Catachan, you don't have enough time to think about faith because you're too busy trying to kill the wildlife that's trying to kill you.
And there'll also be, I imagine, you know, there's a massive difference in class for the 40k world, where maybe if you are doing a dangerous job every day, some faith in the Emperor blessing you before you get to work is probably helpful. If you're super rich, living the life of luxury, you're probably just paying lip service to it when your ecclesiarchy mate comes around for dinner, you know.
And like,
have a
in
wedding
all honesty, when you live in a world of psychic powers and aliens and stuff like that, it's not really that far-fetched that the Emperor could be a god. You know what I mean? It's like there's already chaos gods and stuff. It's like, you know,
he's not even special.
No, exactly.
Whip did zap, the zip dip the wrap. This is what I call the zip zap rap.
Right, welcome everybody to the most exciting part of the show, the random topic generator, where we generate a topic randomly using the company dice, which Welshie has taken out from Lock and Key to roll for us today. Have you got it?
It's number one. What old world race would be best in 40k?
Oh man.
Okay.
Oh.
Old world races. All right. So
it doesn't necessarily have to win. I'm not talking about like just what would you most enjoy seeing in the added to the 40k oeuvre.
I mean, obviously, I'm going to say Bretonnian, but I'm not going to say Bretonnian.
Why would there just be people?
No, wait. Yeah, but I said, but I'm not going to say. I mean, I'm not. They already exist. They live on their like dark angels, whatever. They're knights. But I reckon like the skeletons, like maybe Tomb Kings mixed with vampire counts. That'd be fucking wicked. Whole planets of skeletons. Maybe they get some kind of Nurgle disease, strips their flesh off, and they all go absolutely bananas.
That'd be great. I'd love to see like a battle, because obviously the 40k version of Tomb Kings is the Necron, right? But like some war where the Necrons land on a planet and it's just skeletons walking around thinking they can stand up to these,
what would the Tyranids do? I guess it's still biomass, though, isn't
Yeah,
it?
they
Bone.
still chomp down
Yeah,
on that
yeah,
bone.
yeah.
No worries. Yeah, that would be funny though. Just seeing them. Maybe they'd be skeletons that can kind of reattach, so they just get blown to pieces and then reattach themselves
Rebuild.
and get up
Yeah,
again,
yeah.
just over and over again.
It'd just be like they'd be playing that ooky spooky skeleton xylophone song as they're all like marching down the field.
I'm imagining like funny bones.
Just getting blown up by fucking nuclear
Yeah.
weapons. Like,
Yeah.
There was a grim dark planet in a grim dark world.
yeah.
Yeah, good shout.
Oh, jokes. Yeah, that would be good. Right, well, I don't know. I don't know if this counts as an old world thing, because I think it's an Age of Sigmar thing, but those like sea elves, I kind of want to see a sea-based, a sea-based, faction, like a future one where they're all like, they look like they're out of, Waterworld or something like that. Like, maybe they could redo the Dark Elves into sea pirates or something, some shit like that. I think
they
that would
did
be
have
cool.
actually like a couple of issues ago in White Dwarf. They had this like lore/battle report from like Space Marines fighting completely underwater against Tyranids, like under the water.
Okay.
With this like faction of underwater Space Marines that were fully like hermetically sealed in their suits and stuff, which was quite cool.
Full of farts.
Yeah, grim.
Yeah.
They had like a special sanction for using these special weapons that could still fire underwater. That was quite cool.
I thought Space Marines were meant to be able to fight underwater.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I think they can normally, but these
Thanks.
guys were like prolonged experts at it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe some sea elves or like maybe like what have they got? They've got ogres, but I guess they're like Ogrin really, aren't they?
Yeah.
Army. An Ogrin army would be quite cool though. Rattlings, they've got them, I think, as well, don't they?
Well, yeah, straight up rattlings. Well, I guess
what's in the old world that's not crossed over? We've got
lizard men and slam. Slam would be great, juxtaposed to anything 40k to just have kind of comedy frog people walking around.
Goblins.
Yeah. Aren't Slan in the lore of 40k somewhere?
Yeah,
aren't they like
they're the old
or
ones.
something?
Yeah. Rumored. I don't think.
Yeah, well, that's the kind of.
Yeah.
I guess that's the closest thing to them because they are the old precursors of the old. They are the old world to the old world, right? In old world lore.
Yeah.
So I think that's the kind of.
What are you saying? Rattlings are they?
Well, rattlings exist in snipers, don't they?
Yeah.
Oh, in the old world, you mean halflings?
Sorry, I mean I don't mean rattlings. I mean Skaven.
Oh, Skaven. Yeah.
Well, the Skaven. There's the. Do you remember when we talked ages ago about the Hrud?
Yes, they're the rumored.
One of the early Hrud concept designs was basically a space Skaven, but then it got changed into a kind of space mushroom type thing.
Yeah. There's some guy I follow on Facebook who's been making a space Skaven army. I think it's called, if anybody wants to follow him, I think it's called Proper Ratkin of the 41st Millennia or something like that. And it's just him like, he never finishes any of his models, which is frustrating, but he always posts like work in progress of him sticking rats' heads on space marines and stuff, and it's all quite good.
I did see my first orc conversion from the like swampy orcs, and it looked great. Someone's making like a Necromunda kill team where they're all those new swampy orcs with chainswords and like guns.
Cool.
Yeah,
and it looked excellent. It was really good.
Cool.
But yeah, I think anything funny would be. It'd just all be funny to appear in 40k, wouldn't it? Zotes are in both, like as is, pretty much.
True.
Yeah.
Right, well, yeah, I guess I don't know if we've answered that question, but I think at least given some more interesting questions to be answered.
I'm going to tell you about the Black Templars. We've got the Emperor's Champion today, but I mean, faith. Really, you can't get more faithful in many ways to the Black Templars. They are always have been and always probably will be my favorite Space Marine chapter. I think it's the historical link, which we keep touching on, particularly and my love of history has really appealed to me with these guys. But they're a second founding Space Marine chapter, and their gene seed is from Rogel Dawn and the Imperial Fists, which is so they're quite stoic by their nature, but interestingly So after the Horus Heresy, when the legions were broken down into chapters of 1,000 Marines, something I didn't know until the other day was apparently Dawn really didn't like that, and there was nearly a civil war where Dawn would not stop moaning about the fact that his Imperial fists were being broken up. But eventually he got over it, and the Imperial fists were split into 4 new Space Marine chapters. The 4th being the Black Templars, which came under the command of Sigismund, who is a very famous Horus Heresy character. Is he the first captain of the Imperial Fists? Something like that.
I don't know whether he's the first, but he's major.
He's high up, isn't
major.
he? Yeah.
I mean, there's a wonderful bit in the Siege of Terror where he's fighting back to back with Dawn against Fulgrim.
Oh, excellent!
He is a true hero of the Horus Heresy. Yeah. Good stuff.
Well, then that's why. So he basically becomes the first Black Templar, and I think some of the Forge World Imperial Fist models have the Maltese cross on, which is the sign of the Templars. So they've kind of they've reverse engineered this history of the Black Templars into the Imperial Fists, because the Black Templars have always been a really popular chapter in terms of Games Workshop, but they're also one of the largest chapters in the lore of 40k. Because they hated the fact that they were limited to 1,000 Space Marines. The Codex Astartes, there was kind of this clause where if you were on crusade, you could increase your number of Space Marines. So the Black Templars basically said, right, well, we're going to be on crusade.
That's so childish. You could just imagine that conversation where you can only. No. 1,000. Oh,
yeah. So and they absolutely have. So they have been on a crusade for 10,000 years. They've continuously been on crusade. Nobody really knows how many of them there are. And at one stage, there was recorded the fact that they were on 14 crusades across the galaxy at the same time. But I think normally it's about 3 crusades, and the chapter is split up into all these different crusades. They don't have a home world because of that. They literally just rampage across the galaxy in these huge space fleets, building keeps, castles, whenever they reclaim a world, they build a keep, and it becomes like a way station that they can stop off at and get supplies. And I'm sure there must be some Templars that stay there and monitor the local populace. But so they become a bit more tied in with the real life Knights Templar and the history of the Crusades. They are knights in Space Marine armor. Obviously, the most famous one being the Emperor's Champion, who we saw the new model of today. Sigismund, during the Siege of Terror, was elected to be the Emperor's Champion by Rogel Dawn, and he fought off. Maybe this ties in with what you were just saying, Welshie. I'm not sure, but he had to fight all these demons, and from that date, there's always been an Emperor's Champion that is elected by the High Marshal, who is the leader of the chapter. Every crusade is led by a marshal, but the High Marshal is the leader, and they always elect an Emperor's Champion who dons the greatest war gear and the greatest weapon that they have, and they basically send this guy out, and he has to try to duel with and take out the enemy commander. So that's where that character comes from. But their faith that kind of sets them apart from the other Space Marines is that they believe the Emperor is a god, whereas most Space Marine legions chapters believe that he's just he's like their hero, he's their gene sire. They don't really think he's a god, but the Black Templars are fully on board with the Imperial cult. So much so they hate the mutant, they hate the heretic. They don't have any librarians because they see them as a mutant. They barely contain themselves when they're on their ships and they've got navigators and astropaths. they probably have to get locked out of the room. So they hate anything to do with
if I was
psychic powers.
I'll just pretend I had a map. Be like, oh yeah, looking in the map. Oh yeah, the map says like.
Yeah.
Oh, this eye. Oh, I drew it as a tattoo.
Yeah.
Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
But weirdly, they're always honoured to fight alongside the Grey Knights. They don't see them as being anything other than perfect warriors for the God Emperor, because they see the Grey Knights as like real children of the Emperor, because they have a direct gene seed link with the Emperor, and none of them have ever been corrupted. So they kind of, the Grey Knights are okay. Librarians, they're not okay. But they are they're very fanatical in their faith, because they believe in the God Emperor, and they revere him. So they go nuts if they see a witch. They spend most of their free time praying. So this kind of links back in with the idea of the medieval warrior monk, which these guys are definitely are. And they don't, because of that, because they just want to charge in and kill the enemies of the Emperor. They don't have a company of training Space Marines, which tend to fulfill like a scout role in most chapters. They don't have that because they don't need scouts. They just have initiates mixed in with their squads, which is, maybe we'll see if there's a new codex, but in the old Black Templar codices, you would be able to field units of like 20 or 30 of these guys mixed in with
like mini Marines.
Yeah, you'd use the old scout models, but you could have huge units of close combat blobs, because you'd have a mixture of neophytes and I can't remember what they're called, but the actual Space Marines. You could have them all mixed in. The other kind of difference between other Space Marine armies are, both in lore and on the tabletop, is that they chain their weapons to their arms, and you kind of saw that in the new Emperor's Champion model. He has a chain on the bottom of his sword, which isn't on the old metal model, but the old plastic range, they had all their bolt guns were chained to them, where before battles the Black Templars chain their weapons to themselves, and they can only take the chains off when victory is achieved. But that's called the devotion chains. But there's even more. There's more types of chains where I don't know. Maybe I can't remember. Maybe you make a sin or something, or you do something wrong, but these chains get welded onto you, so you can never take your weapon away from you. You just have your weapons welded on with these chains.
Well, and then Daniel Radcliffe
until
film,
you die.
where he's got those Uzis nailed to his hands.
I haven't seen that. Sounds good. Yeah.
Isn't it like, isn't it welded onto your armor? You just get out your armor and you're like, oh, that's all right.
Yeah,
maybe I needed my gun when I was in my armor anyway, so it's kind of
maybe
handy.
they weld it onto your glove and then weld it onto your armor, and then you won't be able to separate the two. I don't know. We're getting technical. Right. But anyway, that's the Black Templars. They're a very cool chapter.
They are great, and they've always looked great.
Yeah. And it's properly knights in space, which is what I think that we can all agree this essentially boils down to. Yeah. So
I love it because they are. It's weird that they come from the Imperial Fists, right? Because they are. The Black Templars in 40k are everything aesthetic-wise that the Dark Angels are in 30k.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's weird that there's no link between the two of them.
I was thinking they looked
the black armor.
More, but and he's got kind of like a lion insignia on his knee, the one we're looking at as well.
Yeah. The fists, they are quite kind of stoic, stubborn, and I think it's funny.
And Sigismund as the leader is all, I think, related to the fact that he's the less stoic, less wanting to stand on the wall. He's the only one that like directly disobeys a Dawn command because he thinks it's for the better. Like he's the one that would go out and do the
he wants to go forward.
Yeah, we're going to go forward, and I think that his personality probably goes a lot into it.
obviously there are many other Space Marine chapters, and we've had a whole episode where we've spoken about the Grey Knights and the faith that they have, and we also, in that episode, we spoke about the Space Wolves and the White Scars, who have funny versions of essentially all the same thing, where they don't quite believe the Emperor is a god, blah blah blah. But the Salamanders are also quite interesting, because they have like a real genuine concern for the safety of civilians in the Imperium, which is quite unlike other Space Marine chapters. And they have all sorts of, I've just written something here. They have some weird almost cults within the Salamanders, and the Nocturnian people on Nocturne, their home world. And apparently so Salamanders, they still know their families, so they go back to see their families, like we go home and see our parents.
Sure.
they go
like
back in their bright green armor.
Hobbs and Shaw, the Fast and Furious film, where like giant Dwayne Johnson goes back and sees all his like tiny family on some Pacific island, wherever it is.
Oh yeah, it would be like that, yeah. But they're deeply connected with the civilian population on their homeworld, and the faith of the Salamanders is a variation of the Imperial cult, and it's called the Promethean cult. And it's the teachings that have been written down by the Primarch Vulcan, and it's all about how the Legiones Astartes are to protect humanity. Their only purpose is to protect humanity, and that they are purely a savage weapon given physical and spiritual form to fulfill that single end. And they manifest themselves, their faith manifests themselves by honor scarring. So the Black Templars chain themselves to weapons. The Salamanders, they almost do self-flagellation. They burn themselves, they scar themselves in this kind of symbolic ritual before and after the battles. But because they still believe in the Emperor completely, the ecclesiarchy do not view this subcult as heretical. I guess there must be a fine line between whoever decides what cult is heretical and what cult is okay. There must be a fine line that you have to carefully tread. But anyway,
what do you
these
think the
guys are cool.
Redemptionists would think when they go up against the most flamer wielding Space Marines?
They probably love it.
They'd love, but they hate anything. They'd be against it. But I think they'd find themselves swiftly consumed by their own fire.
The 70s, the 80s,
The 90s.
Ooh, we're going back in time. Is that a space squad? It's time we take you back with a blast from the past.
All right, guys. This guy represents really the historical link of the Black Templars with the Knights of the Crusades. This is a representation of a famous period in history, the Battle of Hattin, where the army of Christendom march out from Jerusalem in the heat of summer, I think in the Third Crusade, carrying the holy relic called the True Cross. They have no water. It's the worst military decision probably in history, but they have the True Cross relic, and they march out of Jerusalem to their doom at the hands of Saladin. And this is the 40k version of that. They are carrying holy relics on their back, and the main guy in this group of warriors is Merrick Grimaldus. He is the Ecclesiarch, or the High Chaplain of the Black Templars. This is like the second guy in command. He's the highest rank of chaplain. For me, this is the Black Templars. This model. It's such a great character model. When this came out, I just fell in love. It's just amazing, and the little servitors that surround him carrying those holy relics, just amazing. And do you know what? I never bought this guy, and it's gonna go. And I just, when this episode started, honest to God, I bought them off the Games Workshop website.
Are they going to be shite cast?
Yeah, but sod it. I mean,
when did these come out, Matt? Roughly,
2004.
Okay.
2004, 2005, which is all the plastic Templar range. Yeah, these were metal, but yeah.
So just for the listeners at home, you get Merrick in the box, but then you also get 3 kind of servitor guys with him.
Yeah.
Also, pretty worthy of mention. They're quite different to anything else I've seen in terms of a servitor.
The bull things are cool.
They've got kind of, one of them's got no arm, instead just got a chain with like an incense bull on it.
Yeah.
And then the other one looks like, has he got 2 incense bulls on his arm?
I think his hands are just sensors, aren't they? Just
I think these guys are literally living joss sticks. Basically, these are just incense carriers that walk around with this guy. And then he's got the guy that's got a piece of scenery, holy scenery with him that he's carrying around. The model itself is cool. It's all chained.
I've actually never seen this chaplain before. He is
really?
excellent.
Oh, what? Yeah. This is. I mean, it's he's still for sale on the Games Workshop website for now. But so on his the chaplains carry a rosary, what's it called? Rosarius, the weapon that chaplains carry. Crozius, that's Arcanum.
it.
Yeah. On his Crozius, he has a cross that looks very similar to the cross on the hilt of the new Emperor's Champion model. I mean, obviously it's just a cross, but it looks quite similar. You can just see the chains on his plasma pistol. He's kind of got chained up. He's covered in robes and relics, candles, all the good imperial stuff.
A speaker on his chest, so he can like be shouting.
I think that's just the old Space Marine armor. Yeah. But yeah, it was, and we're looking at a piece of artwork as we're discussing this in the background, which was the artwork in the 4th edition Black Templar. So he had a double spread. So you'd open your codex page and this artwork would be in the background of all the text. And yeah, because it's like 2004, I remember just being blown away by the artwork in this codex. It's
so they had a full
one of my favorite books.
Separate codex.
Yeah. They had full plastic range. Like the models were amazing for the time. Like so good. Like really, really good.
So I think it's interesting that these. I mean, obviously we've seen one. This could be the next revamp that they're bringing back. At the time we talked about. I said earlier with the history, like what were the custodes doing for 6,000 years, waiting in the basement of the Imperial Palace? But we've talked lore-wise. Abnett's possibly bringing back Constantine Valdor.
Yeah.
As a kind of what's happened to the Imperium, it's got to bloody pious. These guys would be the obvious, like if you were ever going to do civil war, Valdor's custodes versus these guys as a kind of signal to the Imperium that it's time to clear out this religious bullshit would just be amazing. I don't think they'd ever do it. I think it's too off kilter, but as a story, that would be incredible.
I think, to be honest with you, Space Marines need this range right now. The more I kind of think about it, the more it makes sense. We've had so much of this Primaris stuff, it's not to some people's taste, whatever. It'd just be good to get back to some good old-fashioned grimdark, religious zealots, cut the guy's arms off to stick an incense burner on him, all that kind of stuff. That's
absolutely.
So it'd be nice to see some of this in the new style. So let's hope that.
I really hope they do like a full fleshed out range. Like they've had a codex before. Like they could easily have one again. Like
it could totally be like one of those armies like Grey Knights where you just do a codex for it and it just sits there for ages, just being an army for years and years without really needing much tending to it, So let's hope so. They're a cool army.
So welcome back, everybody, to this, the last part of the show, a little part that we like to call the Lords of Law, where I pit Matt and Welshie against each other in a quiz to find out who is the Lord of Law. And this week we're doing Spelling Bee, Warhammer 40,000 Spelling Bee. Obviously,
great.
as some long-time listeners know, this Large Blast podcast is a dyslexic-heavy podcast. And the world of Games Workshop is not friendly to the dyslexic man, and they're trying to read these weird words. So it has, Matt, I believe that you are one of my dyslexic brethren in this. Am I right?
Yes, we're all part of the strange cult.
That's right. We're all part of the dyslexic brethren. So don't worry, I have taken that into account. So, Welshie, are you ready for your first word?
Yes, I am, and I can already see where it's going. Yeah.
Okay.
Can you say the word though?
That's the problem. That
question.
really is the problem. Is I've got to find one that I can read. Welshie, you know that Nurgle Slime, the guy on a snail, he's called Horticulturalox Slimux. Can you spell that?
I don't even know what he's called, so that's quite difficult.
He's called Horticulus Slimux.
That doesn't I will go HORTICULOUS
Oh, okay.
SLIMOX.
It's UX, I'm afraid. But that
was
was
that the only mistake?
That was
that's
amazing.
very-
That was the only mistake. My goodness, that was crazy.
You know, that's the gift of not being dyslexic for you there, Matt.
So let me just pick a word for you at random here. Matt, can you spell the word orc?
It's ORK.
That's right. 1 point to you also, Matt. Okay, cool. Back to it. Let's see. So, Welshie, you ready for your second word?
Yeah.
Can you spell the word Drakari, as in the Dark Elves are also, or Dark Elder are also known as Drakari?
DRUKHARI.
Oh, it's on fire. On fire. Okay, great. Okay, so Matt, I'm picking you a word at random here from the Large Blast podcast computer. Matt, can you spell bolt gun?
It's BOLT GUN.
I'm afraid you forgot the space. I'm going to have to dock you a point.
Bolt gun is one word.
It is one word.
I think you should give me two.
Okay, cool. For pointing out problems with the... Yeah, you're right. You passed the test, Matt. You get 2 points. Okay.
This is a fix.
All right, Welshie, can you spell Trazyn the Infinite?
Yeah. TRAZYNTH space THE space INFINITE.
Yes, that checks out. I just had to write that in as you were doing it. Yes,
Correct.
another point for you, Welshie. There. Cool. So, Matt, can you spell dice?
DICE.
Yeah.
Nice.
Checks out. Okay, Welshie, this is the last question for all the beans, all the money, everything.
I'm ready.
Okay. Oh, shit. Oh. Can you spell Perturabo?
PERTURABO.
Oh, done it again. He's nailed it. Matt, can you spell the word space?
SPE.
You say SPE?
No.
I think you did. That's what I heard as well.
thought it said
SPE.
SPACE.
SPACE. Okay.
All right, cool. All right. Well, just entering the scores to the Large Blast podcast computer here, and fuck it, no one won. Nobody won. It's only winners. Everybody won. Only you at home, the listener, was the loser. I'm afraid on that one. But we'll see you next time for another Large Blast podcast. See you later.
See ya.
Yeah.
Remember to have faith.